And while we desperately need constructive ideas right now, much of what we're getting instead is rebranding. The National Republican Congressional Committee, for example, has now started an effort to rebrand the economic crisis as the Pelosi recession. Oh, well, that's helpful. Some Republican governors have tried to rebrand the stimulus bill as the thing that is causing the economic crisis, turning down federal money for people who are unemployed as if federal efforts to stimulate the economy are what knocked the economy out in the first place. Nevada's Republican Governor Jim Gibbons, who presides over a state with a double-digit unemployment rate, he's the latest to say that he plans to pass on the unemployment benefits offered in the federal stimulus bill. Gibbons joined South Carolina Governor Mark Sanford, Texas Governor Rick Perry, Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal, and Alaska Governor Sarah Palin on the list of Republicans saying thanks but no thanks to money for broke unemployed people during a recession caused and perpetuated by people not having enough money to spend. And have you heard the Republican response to President Obama's proposed budget? This will surely help.
The practical implications of this is bankruptcy for the United States. There's no other way around it.
That is not sustainable. It poses a threat to the basic health of our economy.
We're on the fast road to financial destruction.
The fast road to financial destruction. Senator John McCain calls the budget a threat to the nation. And your guys' alternative idea is what exactly? Yeah, the plans being proposed by the Obama administration to try to save the economy are big and controversial, and they need to be improved and refined and maybe in some cases scrapped altogether through a process of rigorous, smart, informed, civic-minded, honest debate. We actually have to get good at the process of making economic policy right now because the economic problems we've got require really good, really smart, well thought out responses. I would like to think that our political process gives us a good venue for doing that. That's what it's designed for, right? But instead, we're turning down stimulus money to score political points. We're naming the recession after different people. We're yelling about financial Armageddon and not proposing any alternative to it. With national challenges this big, we need better politics to address these challenges. Is there any hope of that? Joining us now is Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio. Senator Brown, thanks for coming back on the show.
Glad to be back. Thank you, Rachel.
Democrats are not unified by any means right now, but I think you can safely say there's pretty broad Democratic support for what the president's trying to do on the economy. Is there a Republican plan on the economy that is visible to you in D.C. that we can't see from out here?
Well, the Republican plan looks a lot like it did my first year in the House in 1993 when their plan was to vote no on everything. Their plan was to say the sky is falling. Their plan was to say it would plunge the nation into depression, recession for sure, depression maybe. It was one thing after another, the same kinds of things that I just heard Senator Gregg and Senator Collins and others saying, that anything we do is just going to be a disaster. The fact is, I don't agree with everything in the Obama budget, of course not, but it's absolutely right on health care, it's absolutely right on education, really is a down payment for the future. And look what, 15 years ago when President Clinton offered his budget, Republicans all voted no. We got 6, 7, 8 years of strong economic growth. When President Bush took office, we had a deficit of $6 trillion. When Barack Obama took office, the debt was double that, about $12 billion. And you can see how their economics versus our economics works. I mean, I don't want to make it that way, but we need them to come together and work with us, give us their ideas. If they're sound, as many Republican governors' ideas are, then we'll move with some of them. If they're just opposition in name calling, then we move forward as we did on the stimulus package.
What I have seen in terms of Republican governors so far, the way that they have put their head the furthest above water is by turning down some of the stimulus money, saying that they don't, in particular, want to give any money, additional money to unemployed people because they're worried that will create some sort of obligation to them. Are you seeing something else smart from Republican governors beyond that, or is that smarter than it looks?
Well, I'm seeing some Republican governors around the country, like Governor Christ from Florida and Governor Schwarzenegger, who are part of this. They want to support support things that President Obama is doing. They've welcomed him to his states. To those states and a few other states where Republican governors have been more cooperative. If I were unemployed and living in Louisiana or Texas or South Carolina, one of those states where the Republican governor has been every bit as partisan as Republican House members have been since President Obama's been sworn in, I'd be rather unhappy that I got laid off through no business of no fault of my own, and my governor's turning down money for unemployment compensation. I mean, I don't get it. But there have been some responsible Republican governors. The White House has worked with them, listened to their ideas, accepted some of them. I wish that some of my colleagues in the House and Senate were as open-minded as some of those governors around the country that have done the right thing.
In thinking about trying to match political outrage, political heat to policy needs, I am struck by how much attention we have spent, and myself included, in terms of talking about those AIG bonuses. We got news late today. The New York State Attorney General Andrew Cuomo says that 9 of the 10 top AIG bonus executives are going to return those checks. So essentially, we're left with a situation where it's been really fun to get outraged about those bonuses, but now that problem has been largely fixed, and we still have all the economic challenges we had before this scandal. Do you think it was a mistake to get so hung up on that one outrageous issue, or was it important?
Well, I think it's important that people have some confidence in their government and in their financial and some confidence in Wall Street and the banking system. And when they saw those AIG bonuses, it just again hurt our efforts to build confidence. The bigger issue for AIG was that they passed this money on, finally announced that they did, pass this money on to billions and billions of dollars, made 100 cents on the dollar, passed these dollars on to Societe Generale, a French bank, Barclays, a British bank, a German bank, Deutsche Bank, and also to Goldman Sachs in New York, made them whole when they shouldn't have been made whole. They took a risk, they lose something, and it wouldn't have brought the financial system down. Those are the more substantive, serious issues we need to look at with AIG and throughout this financial services industry. We're going to stabilize the financial services industry. We're going to get this economy back on its feet. We need to focus on those issues that will actually do that.
Is congressional oversight going to be key to making sure that that stabilization is done in a way that is less infuriating than the way it's been done over the past few months?
Yeah, congressional oversight needs to be aggressive. We need to begin to fix those things that were broken, months and months and months ago and years ago in the Bush administration. We also need to move quickly, as Chairman Dodd and others in the banking committees in both houses. I sit on the Senate Banking Committee, that we need to do to rebuild this regulatory structure. We had a strong regulatory structure that came out of the Depression. We had no real financial failures in the next 50 years until the beginning of the Reagan years when they deregulated. Look what happened with the savings and loan crisis. Look what happened with more deregulation with Enron. Look what happened with more deregulation on some of these hedge funds. And now look what's happened in the last 6 months. That's directly a result of deregulation. We need to rebuild this regulatory structure, which will last another 50, 60, 70 years, and do it right so we don't have these kinds of hits to ultimately to American workers that is destroying the middle class in this country. And that's our most important work, to build that long term and get our economy and our financial structure much more sound than it's been the last 20 years.
Learning about this crisis has turned into a crash course in learning about regulation and deregulation. Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio, thank you so much for your time tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you.
President Obama meets the press corps tomorrow night in prime time. It took George W. Bush 9 months to do his first primetime press conference. President Obama is already doing his second one. NBC's White House correspondent Chuck Todd joins us next. And later, as part of his President of All Media tour, Obama on 60 Minutes has finally become not so cool, not so calm, and not so collected when asked about Dick Cheney. That's coming up. But first, one more thing about the Republican response to the economic crisis. Governor Sarah Palin, who made famous the line, "Thanks but no thanks," may have just pulled off a rare thanks but no thanks, but actually, now that I think about it, thanks. Palin initially said she would join other Republican governors / 2012 presidential wannabes in rejecting federal economic stimulus money for her state. But after a bit of an outcry at home, Palin's lieutenant governor now says she isn't technically rejecting the funds. She just wants to have a debate about how Alaska should spend that money. In other words, you can see cake from her house, and you can eat it from there, too.